What would Labour do?
Well, we've already talked about, I mean, some of the taxation decisions that the government have made around inheritance tax, capital gains tax, corporation tax, where you've given away money. People know about the ageing population for some time. We've cut the criteria so people can't get community care. We treat our older people at the moment like dogs. It's a disgrace. This is what Jeremy was talking about in Prime Minister's question today. You've given away money that actually, quite frankly, we need to spend. And it's not just about an ageing population. That is
Have you ever watched a political interview that left you completely speechless? Not because of what the interviewer said, but because the person being interviewed couldn't answer even the most basic questions. That's exactly what happened. When Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, sat down with Andrew Neil, one of the UK's toughest and most relentless political interviewers, what should have been a golden opportunity for Labour to show its competence and vision for the future of Britain instead turned into something completely different. What we saw wasn't strength, it wasn't clarity, it was a slow, uncomfortable breakdown, a moment where a senior political figure simply couldn't give the answers that voters deserve. Before we continue, I'd like to quickly ask a small favour. If you're enjoying this content, could you take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel? Believe it or not, over 98% of you watch these videos without hitting that subscribe button. It's completely free and makes a huge difference in helping us bring you more of the content you enjoy. Angela Rayner walked into that interview with confidence. She carried the hopes of millions of Labour supporters, especially those desperate for change after more than a decade of Conservative rule. But in just a few minutes, that confidence began to crumble. Andrew Neil asked her a simple, direct question, one that any senior Labour politician should have been ready for. Would Labour reverse the cuts to corporation tax? This wasn't a trick question. It wasn't a policy trap. It was basic economics, something a deputy leader should be able to discuss with clear, confident answers.
Do reverse the cuts on corporation tax?
I think that the cuts on corporation tax are missing a point because we need that money. We need that money at the moment.
Would you reverse it? Hold on.
Inheritance tax.
Would you reverse them?
But I'm telling you, Andrew, that our priority is
You're not telling me the question.
I am. I'm saying that the cuts in corporation tax, the cuts in inheritance tax, the cuts in capital gains tax.
But where was the?
Well, what I'm saying, Andrew, and
No. What you're saying is wrong.
No.
They raised the capital gains tax to 28%.
What I'm saying is that they've given tax cuts to absolutely the richest in the country.
But instead of offering a clear answer, Rayner responded with vague, broad statements about Labour's priorities and values. There was no clarity, no detail, no vision, just noise. Sensing her weakness, Neil pushed harder. What about inheritance tax? What about capital gains tax? Again, Rayner stumbled. She dodged. She avoided. She tried to steer the conversation towards attacking the Conservatives, accusing them of giving tax breaks to the rich. But Neil, always armed with facts, corrected her. He pointed out that capital gains tax had actually been increased. Rayner was left fully exposed. When facts clash with political slogans, facts usually win. And here's why this moment is so important. Taxes like corporation tax, capital gains tax, and inheritance tax aren't just talking points. They're the core of how any government pays for the NHS, schools, police, transport, and more. So, when a senior Labour politician can't clearly explain her party's stance on these taxes, it raises a bigger question. Is Labour really ready to govern? But the disaster didn't end there. The conversation moved to something even more personal, Britain's broken social care system. Rayner, with real anger in her voice, said, "We treat our older people like dogs. It's a disgrace." You could feel the emotion in her words, and she wasn't wrong. Our care system is struggling. Too many elderly people are left without the support and dignity they deserve.
The cut in capital gains tax.
But what's really important,
No,
Andrew...
no, excuse me, I'm asking you a question. What's the cut in the capital gains tax?
They've cut the capital gains tax. They did that. They did that as part of the coalition government. And the amount of money that's going into the economy, you know, you've not made it better. Our economy is worse as a result of 6 years of austerity. And now you're saying all of a sudden we can spend money. No, let me finish this point, because you've interrupted me and I want to make this point. It's really serious to people in this country that you've told people we've got to live within our means. We've got to have this austerity. We've got to cut.
But emotion isn't enough. Voters want to know how Labour would fix it. Where would the money come from? How much would they invest? What specific policies would actually change the system? Rayner didn't offer those answers. She raised the issue, and she was right to, but she couldn't explain how Labour would solve it. And in politics, when you shine a spotlight on a problem, you must bring a solution too. Otherwise, your passion feels empty. Then came the biggest policy failure of the night, Labour's housing plan. The party has promised to build 1.5 million homes. On paper, that sounds bold. It sounds great. But when Neil started asking how this would happen, Rayner's answers completely collapsed. Where will these homes be built? How will Labour deal with the shortage of land? What about the lack of skilled construction workers? How do they plan to handle rising immigration, which keeps pushing up housing demand? These weren't trick questions, they were the basics. And again, Rayner had no real answers. She kept saying the target was mandatory, that Labour would make it happen, but just saying something doesn't make it true. If the construction industry says the current workforce isn't enough, how will Labour meet that goal? If immigration continues at high levels, will Labour adjust housing targets to keep up? Rayner avoided specifics, and the more she dodged, the more Neil exposed. Then came the real contradiction. Labour promises to build 1.5 million homes, but can't say who they're actually for. If immigration keeps rising, housing demand will always outpace supply, meaning Labour may never catch up. But if they want to control that demand, does that mean Labour plans to tighten immigration?
You need to get your policies right. What would the capital gains tax be under a Labour government, and how much would that raise compared to now?
But I've told you, Andrew, what our priority is. It's about how we invest in our public services.
No, I'm asking you how you would raise the money. How much extra money would you raise by changing the current corporation tax and capital gains tax structures?
But Andrew, we've talked about in absolute detail about the current tax system.
Would you say...
You've cut 50%. In my constituency, both of my councils have seen over 50% cuts to their budget.
Again, Rayner wouldn't say. The interview didn't feel like a debate. It felt like a collapse. And the public noticed. Within hours, social media exploded. Commentators, journalists, and ordinary voters were shocked. One tweet summed it up perfectly. If Rayner can't answer basic economic questions, how are we supposed to trust Labour to run the country? It wasn't just a bad performance, it was a moment of reckoning. People began to seriously wonder whether Labour, under its current leadership, really has the depth to lead Britain through its many crises. This wasn't just about Angela Rayner having a tough day. This was about what Labour truly stands for. This was about whether a party that can't explain its own policies can actually be trusted to govern. Let's be clear. The UK is in a fragile state. We're facing a cost of living crisis. Public services are stretched to their limits. The NHS is struggling to keep up. People don't need empty slogans, they need real solutions. And in that interview, Labour offered none. Angela Rayner's performance raised serious concerns about the party's readiness. If one of Labour's top figures can't explain how key policies will be paid for or delivered, how can we believe that Labour has a serious plan to govern? Labour says it's ready. But after this interview, more and more people are beginning to ask, ready for what? What do you think? Was this just a tough interview, or did it reveal something deeper about Labour's leadership and preparation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this analysis helpful, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into British politics. We're here to break things down clearly, passionately, and honestly, because you deserve to know the full story. This is UK Politics Now. Thanks for watching.